Hi, James.
Hi, good to have you here, and great to see you again.
Yeah, we are here at Code Camp in Timisoara. Actually, these days we were speaking about the DCI, but this interview discussion to be about Scrum. Yesterday evening we discussed a lot about Scrum, and we spotted again some patterns of problems. But let's start with the beginning. Scrum has some sources, some roots. It's data production system, but also Buddhism. And I heard you once you said about that, and I was curious, can you extend a little bit on this aspect?
Yeah, I mean, Scrum, Jeff talks about many roots of Scrum. I think depending on the audience, he tells a little different story about one of the different paths that fed into Scrum. And so, I mean, some of this comes from robotics research at MIT, some from, I think some from his Vietnam experience, some from some more mystical experiences. So I know Jeff spent a lot of time in spiritual meditation. I think not so much during his time in Vietnam, but maybe after his time in Vietnam. I know he spent some time in a monastery, Buddhist monastery in Japan. They actually made him a monk. And so in some sense, there's a path, a Buddhist path through Jeff from that source. But of course, in line with the broader perception of Scrum, Scrum comes from the Toyota production system, but really more broadly from Japanese culture. And I think this is kind of a perfect storm where you have this mix of the Japanese culture coming through Toyota and then through Jeff's personal experience. So I think it's maybe too strong to say that Scrum came from Buddhism, but I mean you can use Buddhism as or use a metaphor as a Buddhism, shall I say, to talk about the same kind of experience you might as you go through a Scrum transition. So, I mean, in some sense, Scrum is not a method. I mean, it's clearly not a method, but in some sense, Scrum is a lot about discovering or learning about yourself, first as a team, and then second as an individual. And about who you are, and how you connect with other people, and what you value, and what your place is in the world for steering the world of work and for doing great things. I think from a practical point of view, a lot of the more practical part of the metaphor is that a lot of people will say, are you doing Scrum? And I recently had some debates with people about, can you measure even if a team is doing Scrum? And there's this saying every once in a while about Scrum is not about what you do, it's about what you are. And at least that's closer, but I think Scrum is more about a becoming. And so Scrum is about what you are becoming, and so it's this process. And in that sense, Buddhism is a lot the same. It's about a journey of discovery and of learning and of being more enlightened, if you will, all the time. So I think there's a lot of parallels between, what's classically put forth as the Buddhist journey and what we see as trappings of the Scrum journey. And I do a lot of work in Japan, so I like to use these metaphors a lot.
We're witnessing now, and for years, my colleagues and I, and also you, this thing to migrate to Scrum. And we notice certain patterns. Project managers become a Scrum Master, the product managers become a product owner, we do the daily, we do the retrospective, and that's it. This is Scrum. Isn't something wrong here? It's just as simple as that. Some meetings, switching of roles, and that's it.
Well, I mean, we could go into that. Of course, there are a lot of potential traps, when companies go into this, and there is a temptation to take a project manager-shaped role and to make them a Scrum Master, because there's a few things that are in common, like the focus on the process. Traditionally, a project manager focus, and of course, that's a Scrum Master's focus. Very close alignment between product managers and the product owner, and sometimes even Scrum trainers have a hard time getting those straight. So yeah, I mean, a lot of organizations will make those one-to-one mappings. I think the bigger problem more often is that the individuals in the organization will be given those titles, but really not the mandate. So, you were given a title of product owner, but you really don't own anything. I mean, there's still someone calling the shots about what goes into the product. Or product owners will sometimes too often just fall back into kind of a product manager stance. And it's not so much the product manager's fault. But I mean, companies don't understand that, I mean, ideally, the product owner isn't someone you hire. I mean, it's the passionate ideologue behind the product. And so they're the one who's pushing it forward, who's enthusiastic about it, and who is going to be the final authority, the final oracle about what things go into the product and not. And so I think too often, they'll go to like a consulting company and say, can we hire a product owner as though, it's like a product manager. And I'm sure those people are doing their best, but I think, yeah, there are a lot of traps there. I think, though, an even bigger trap may lie in, if we back up and we put that question in context, because the question is a little bit presumptuous in that it presumes that the goal is to do Scrum, right? And so, oh my gosh, you were doing these things, and okay, you had a good project manager and a good product manager, and you were doing okay, and now you're moving to Scrum, and the product manager is acting like a product manager and being evil instead of being a product owner, and the product manager is not acting like a Scrum Master, but still acting like a Scrum Master. Well, I mean, if the team is happy, and if I'm generating value, and there's not any glaring impediments in the way, I'm not going to try to hold up a measuring stick to say, now how scrummy are you? So they can be good indicators. And one of the reasons I teach Scrum is I do think it is a good journey because it makes problems visible, and then teams can fix them. I don't think it's the only path, and it certainly is not the end point. So Scrum is a journey. It's a path for getting there that helps make the problems visible. And I think it's really easy to try to define some KPIs or standards or behaviors, saying, okay, here's the stereotypical Scrum Master, and oh my gosh, they're not doing that, they're falling back into project manager behavior, or the product owner is really consulting with someone else once in a while to ask about the product. Well, maybe that is okay, as long as they have the final authority. So I don't think there's any clear delineating boundaries into what's a problem there and what's not. I mean, of course, product managers make perfectly good product owners, and I mean, there are very, very good project managers who manage with a light touch. I did some research many, many years ago. I was invited to speak at the Project Liz Forum in Denmark, which is where the project managers get together. And I had a lot of fun with them because I was kind of a last-minute replacement for Anya Amundsen, who was supposed to be their keynote speaker. And she's a very famous handball player, very controversial handball player. And I was very early in my days in Denmark, and so I came, with a shirt and a sweater on, and they had their little business meeting, and that was time for me to speak. And I took off my sweater, and I got a handball out of my handbag and said, well, my Danish isn't very good. I think I was brought here to talk about agile handball, and my shirt said, fuck janteloven. So janteloven, the law of Jante, is an unwritten law in Denmark, which is to basically repress people who want to stand out. So all should be equal, you should be very harmonizing, you shouldn't make waves. And this was not Anya Amundsen. So she would wear a shirt that said "fuck Janteloven," and so I ended up wearing this shirt. But the talk I gave there was, I've done these process studies over the years, long before my Scrum years, about what makes good project managers. What do? They don't do anything. They just are. So this is very, very Zen in a sense, but they're kind of this catalyst, and it's not about power or about pushing the organization in some direction. I don't know why those project managers wouldn't make great Scrum Masters. I see no problem there. So, I mean, I don't have any data. I mean, I certainly have some stories to tell about, project managers who are control freaks and come in and really can't get into the Scrum Master shoes. But I'm sure there's people who are certified Scrum Masters who have the same predilection and get into the same kind of messes. So while I do think there's a risk, and there's a risk that project managers Scrum Masters can fall back on the role of project manager roots, and the same with product owners. I don't think it's a death sentence to once have been a project manager or anything like that. And I think the flip side of that, in fact, the Scrum certification for Scrum Masters is 2 days. And we teach you how to jump through the hoops of Scrum. What do project managers know? They know how to deal with people. Okay, they know how to deal with politics. They know how to deal with organizations. They know stuff. And I mean, they've been through learning curves, and they have this certification, which even they do not think is worthwhile, but they've been through the experience. And in the early days of Scrum, I was pretty adamant that we should be listening more to the project management community and partnering with them. But I mean, the young upstart Scrum people were all pretty snooty and not very willing to talk to these terrible project managers who were doing things so awful. And so we never could make that connection, and I felt bad about it. I think there's an awful lot the Scrum community can learn from project managers, and just it's an opportunity missed. And I hope that opportunity comes in the future.
Dailies in Scrum come from your work. It was acknowledged by Jeff Sutherland. But we see them used only as a reporting. Was this your intention, or it was more?
Well, I mean, all I did was I noticed that these things were happening at Borland, the Borland team that I interviewed. And wrote this up in the paper, and Jeff saw it, and the things got into the Scrum framework. But I mean, the Borland team, the architects would meet once a day. It was, I think, quite a long meeting, several hours long, to rehash what they had done the previous day and then to plan things out for the following day. And that's where the daily Scrum came from. And I mean, it was a planning meeting, it was a working meeting. I mean, these guys, these programmers at Borland, I mean, they're all world class in their fields. And so it wasn't, I won't claim it was that they were multi-talented individuals. It was a cross-functional team. I mean, everyone kind of went away and kind of worked on their own part, the GUI or the rule engine or the business logic or whatever. But they synchronized once a day. But it was definitely about replanning the work, recovering from the missteps or the opportunities that they had encountered in the previous day. And that has always been the intent. Both of the Borland team and when Jeff brought it into Scrum. So yeah, I mean, I really had to laugh again and again and again. On the web, I'll find, okay, here's the agenda for a daily Scrum. First 5 minutes, do this. Second 5 minutes, do this, and then go around, discuss the impediments. And no. The metaphor that I use for the daily Scrum is that, I mean, you're like in a box and the water is rising, and you're frantically scrambling to get out of that box. You're scrambling to get out of the end of the sprint alive and to meet the sprint goal. And so it's a very high energy, intense, almost desperate meeting, very noisy, back and forth. Can we try this? No, that won't work. Oh, crap, this ain't good. Let's try this. Yeah, that'll work. Let's do that. A lot of lively discussion. Not something staid and structured and overly constrained. So to me, the daily Scrum is very, very short. It's, like 5 minutes. If the team has been working together as one mind, if they've been swarming, they know where they're at. And they need to synchronize and to kind of formally put a stake in the ground and have a formal statement to say, okay, we acknowledge where we're at. All right, now what are we going to do? Get some consensus about what the key direction is to go, and then just, okay, who wants to do what, and let's figure it out, and let's go. Let's get started. And that's what it's about.
Sometimes I saw them use as updating the Jira items, and that's it.
I mean, updating things like Scrum boards and burn down charts. The problem doing it at the daily Scrum is that, again, it's this sequestered time, and for updating the artifacts, the information readers, you can do that at any time during the day. The nice thing about doing it at the daily Scrum is it has a status and stature of a ceremony. And I mean, there may be some pride in moving that post-it note from in progress to done. Hey guys, I got this done. And they're a little bit proud of that. And the other thing is, it's really visible to the entire team, because the entire team is going to see that person update the board. And so that may be an advantage of it, is that it kind of heightens the visibility and gives some cultural, ceremonial standing to the changing of the status. But I think if it becomes overly ceremonial, that it's a little bit out of place at the daily Scrum, and the time may better be spent doing other things. I think it's important to recognize it's the developers' meeting, and you asked about reporting. We're reporting to whom and why. And I mean, the reason we usually report is, to the project manager, and the project manager can steer the team and say, okay, well, let's try this, and thereby kind of mitigate some risk, or mitigate their risk, or to go back and negotiate with the customer or whatever. Well, we don't change scope in the middle of the sprint, because that ends up being micromanagement, and it's very, very uncomfortable. And we allow the team to set their own direction. This is not a project manager who's outside the responsibilities of development who's telling them what to do. So there's no need for a project manager or Scrum Master, or for that matter, a product owner, to know what the details are. If they care, they can look at these information radiators, the burnout charts and the task board, or whatever other things. And those things are not part of Scrum even, just what teams happen to use. So no, I mean, I'm not even sure I even want to see the Scrum Master at the daily Scrum, except in very young Scrum teams where they're teaching them what the process is and making sure they're following the process. And maybe the product owner should come in once in a while if they need clarification on some direction or on some puzzle that they have about some of the work. Other than that, on a mature Scrum team, I think the product owner is welcome there. But I'm not sure what they're going to do there. I mean, I think their time is better spent often the gambit of the end users, rather than spending time with the team, unless the team needs them to clarify something in order to move forward.
I heard you once when you said that the sprint is like a gift.
Yep.
In what sense? Can you tell more?
Well, sometimes, when we teach time boxing, people say, oh, this is the project manager putting the screws on this, and there's this deadline, and they think deadlines. And especially, one of the danger words in Scrum has been commitment. And in fact, they took that word out of the Scrum Guide for a while. Now it's back in, as of 2021. Or 2022. 2021, whatever the new Scrum Guide was. But we make it very, very clear that committing to your commitment at the end of the sprint is not a promise. It just means, okay, I'm going to give my energy to this, I'm going to do my best, and this has my full attention. But I mean, you can't promise anything. You can't promise the sun is going to rise tomorrow morning. But there's this whole cultural context around classic project management of deadline-based management and making promises to stakeholders, and then asking the team to line up with these promises. The worst is in a lot of cases the project managers will set the schedule, and so the developers really don't have as much input as they should have, and so these are arbitrarily imposed deadlines. I think better project managers will get the consultation of the team. But even so, if you have this deadline mentality, this is a big weight hanging over your head. We flip that on its head in Scrum. And so we don't say, okay, you have this deadline, or here's your scope, you must deliver, and you have 2 weeks. What we do is we say, you have 2 weeks. what can you deliver? What can you commit to? And we'll negotiate a sprint goal. Okay, we'll say, well, I think we can do this sprint goal. Well, no, not quite that. How about this? You negotiate it. And at the end, I mean, the developers have to say, yeah, I mean, we're excited about this. We feel we can do the sprint goal in 2 weeks. But that 2 weeks is a gift to them, during which time we promise not to change scope, not to change the direction, not to meddle with them, not to give them any more work to do. And if someone comes to interfere with them and give them more work or change direction, pow, the Scrum Master will kick them to the moon. All right, this is their time. It's the team's time. It's sacred time. And because it's sacred time, then they can take the responsibility for making a commitment, saying, okay, we think we can deliver this. We're excited about being able to deliver this. So yeah, we're going to commit to the sprint goal. And then the team feels excited about it, and it's not someone external who has imposed some kind of deadline on them, but rather they're driving themselves, and they're excited about doing something great themselves.
Do the product owners work in sprints?
Not really. I mean, when I teach Scrum, I teach it as 2 time bases, or 2 processes. So there's the developer process or sprint process, and that follows the traditional sprint cadence, 1 week, 2 week, 4 weeks, whatever it is. And then there are the product owners. Again, going back to this history of Scrum, and Scrum coming from Japan and so forth. I mean, it comes from this paper by Takeuchi-san and Tanaka-sensei, and what they were looking for. I mean, Japan has always been great at engineering and kind of micro-innovation, but less so at large-scale innovation. And their research was looking at companies asking, what kind of processes foster great innovation. So Scrum is a lot about supporting that kind of innovation. Now, there's day-to-day innovation on the development team in terms of applying the correct technologies and doing design and those kind of things. And that's a challenging job, a lot of innovation there, a lot of great things to do. On the business side, the Scrum team together will be innovating product increments. And usually the product owner takes the lead on that. And the product owner is going to be the one who's out there working with the end users, down in the end user gemba, this company, that company, that company, and then saying, well, it looks like they all kind of have the same problem in their workflow. I think we could build this and give this to them. How about you? Is this going to help you? Is this going to help you? Is this going to help you? But there's this aha that goes on in the product owner when they come up with these innovations. So it's kind of like an invention, right? You can't schedule your next patent. You can't schedule innovation. There's a wonderful, wonderful book called, I can't remember now, but the subtitle is A Short History of Innovation. And the author, Johnson is his name, goes through several traits that aid innovation, or several properties that receive innovation. One is the slow hunch. And he gives a lot of examples of some great examples from history. He looks at Darwin and he says, Darwin was created at creating the theory of evolution in whatever year. But if you look at something he published like 11 years earlier, it was all there. And Darwin didn't recognize it. But it was all there. He had finished this 11 years before he knew he had finished it. And then 11 years later, he recognized, oh, gee, I discovered the theory of evolution, right? And this is how innovation happens, is that it's this slow hunch that will culminate in the aha, and you can't schedule it. If I were to ask product owners to schedule their next innovation, then yeah, we can have them run in sprints, but we can't. It could take hours, it could take years. So product owners have this parallel process that does not run in sprints. When an innovation happens, an innovation happens. They explore it with some prototyping, they explore it with some user workshops, they talk it up with other product owners, they do competitive analysis, benchmarking to validate their hunches, and that takes time. And I mean, a lot of these things are external, and they can't schedule those, they're out of their control. So I think it's very difficult for them to be able to schedule when they're going to be able to drop the next 10 or 20 product backlog items into the sprint. Now, every product owner I've seen has been able to work in a pace that not quite everyone, there have been some exceptions, where the product owners can keep the team satisfied. That is, they can generate enough product backlog items so that the team keeps busy. I've seen some Scrum teams that are so busy, the product owner can't keep up with them because these teams are so good. But the fact is, the product owner does not deliver in sprints. They synchronize with sprints, and they're going to participate in these periodic ceremonies like sprint planning and sprint review. They work with developers every day to kind of make sure that everyone's on the same page and to get feedback and to work with them on estimation and forecasting and understanding dependencies. And so they're interacting with the developers who are in the sprint, but product owners themselves are not sprint bound. It's the developers who are sprint bound.
Can they have a team which can help them?
Oh yeah. So first of all, the Scrum Guide says that the product owner can delegate anything to anyone. There's actually one thing I don't think they can delegate, and that is their accountability for value. I'm not sure if the Scrum Guide says that, but a product owner, it doesn't mean anything for a product owner to delegate their accountability for value. A lot of teams will take this as saying the product owner can delegate to the development team. Many people like that. I can see why they like that. I can see the advantages because the developers now feel more invested, right? They've had a big say in shaping the product and taking the product direction forward. They have a lot more dialogue with kind of the market and the product owner. They're going to be able to appreciate the product in a lot more depth without the product owner having to go into a lot more explanations. The problem is it takes time. And the developers are the goose that lays the golden eggs. And I want the goose that lays golden eggs laying golden eggs. And this means developing product. Not going out and doing market assessment and market analysis. So there's a trade-off. And I usually recommend, because a lot of the teams I'm teaching are just getting started. I usually do not recommend that the product owner delegate work to them. So I'll say the product owner should identify other people in the corporation. And maybe she hires people who works for her. And that becomes a product owner team. And that's all they do. They help the product owner prepare product backlog items for upcoming sprints. Help with competitive analysis. They can be analysts, they can be prototype builders, they can be model builders. They can be liaisons to other companies. They can work with the model shop. They can work with marketing, sales, to help feed the product owner process and inform it to get in the right direction. Because product owner is a huge, huge, huge job. And I think you really have to be superhuman. And sometimes I get even a little bit provocative and say, I want 10 people on this product owner team for every developer. Because that's where the power is. That's where the leverage is. Bugs don't come from stupid developers or broken tools. Bugs come from poor specs. We know this. We've known this for 40 years. And so I want those specs to shine. And I want to hold the product owner accountable for making sure that the developers understand perfectly what it is that they're going to do that's going to generate value. Now, of course, they're part of that process. They're part of the negotiation. But I want the product owner to have done her homework, so when she comes to the developers, set them up for success. That's the product owner's job. Set up those developers for success. And that takes a lot of homework to be able to do.
Sprint reviews. Most see it as strictly related to the current sprint, but is it enough?
So right, the way that I think many Scrum people teach Scrum, and in fact it's called the sprint review. What are you reviewing? The sprint, duh. And maybe we were just naive in the early days of Scrum to call it the sprint review. Because I mean, yeah, by virtue of its title, you're reviewing what comes out of the sprint. And we have, usually the demo, which you're demoing, what you did this sprint, and the product owner kind of varies you by saying, I want to see the test results from this test and things like that. But you know what? That's not very agile. And the reason it's not very agile is because I have this product at the end of the sprint. I'm in sprint review. We have a short superficial demo. It's not a test drive, it's a demo to, the managers of the end users who are there at sprint review, probably, maybe not even any real end users. And we're going to put a gun to their head and say, do you accept this? Is this what you want? And if it is, then we'll ship it to you and say, okay, thank you, goodbye, and check it off of our spreadsheet and say this has been delivered and wash our hands and now go on to the next sprint. Because developers love to go on to bright, shiny new things, right? That's cutting the end users out of the feedback loop. Now Scrum says, okay, well no, there's a perfect opportunity for them to come in the feedback loop. They can come back begging at the next sprint planning and say, you delivered us the wrong thing, please deliver us the right thing. No, this is the product owner's responsibility. And I think the team's responsibility. And what they should be doing at sprint review is saying, okay guys, we delivered you this product backlog item or these features, 3 sprints ago. How's it going? Or here are some data. Some metrics that we're gathering from the application that reflect, how you've been using this over the past 3 sprints. And we notice these problems. Can we talk about this? This is fully within the purview of sprint review. It's reviewing the product and it's getting feedback about the future direction of the product. Except now we're not just saying, okay, let's put a gun to your head, speak now or forever hold your peace. We're using real data and real insight, real developer or real end user experience to be able to steer the product. That's agile. And this is what's going to get us to converge on the right solution in the long term. Again, the end users feel good, that they have a voice, that they're being heard, that the vendor cares about moving them in the right direction. I think really to make this work, instead of having this mentality of contracts or throw it over the wall or us and them or development and end users, is that you build a partnership where there's shared risk, there's shared benefit, shared profits. And the purpose of sprint review is to say, all right, we're all in this together. This has all got to work. We as a vendor are not going to try to screw you at your expense so we can benefit and make more money off when you come back and ask us to fix it. Okay, we're going to sink and swim in this together. What's broke? What do we need to fix? And I think this requires trust, this builds trust, and is much more the spirit of Agile. This sense of having a partnership rather than viewing the sprint review as a sign-off or a spreadsheet product management, saying, okay, we're done with this, throw it over the wall and go on to the next sprint. That's just wrong.
When you said the gun, yesterday evening we said the definition of gun. Oh, done, the gun and the sign-off. Is wrongly used this definition of gun? It has its place here. What is happening?
So a lot of people don't like the definition of done, and some of it I understand, and that's based on their misunderstanding. And some of it I don't think I understand. In general, a lot of the Scrum talking heads out there, when you talk to them, you find they really don't understand it. But they don't like to be controlled, so they don't want estimation because this is controlling them to some commitment. They don't like a sprint goal because that's holding them to some commitment. They don't like definition of done because that's holding them to some commitment. The 3 commitments in Scrum is the team is committed to the product goal, the team is committed to the sprint goal every sprint, and for the product increment, they're committed to the definition of done, per this earlier definition of commitment that we talked about. So I think there's kind of a lot of whining and grousing because just, people don't want to be held to a commitment. They want to view Scrum as a playground. Okay, we're going to do the best. You just have to trust us. We're going to do our best. And you get what you get. You don't get what you pay for, you get what you get. And if it's done, it's done. If it's not, it's not. Tough. We did our best. I think that's a little bit professionally irresponsible, particularly in markets, where timing is everything. In markets with very, very short deadlines, with real hard market repercussions, legal repercussions for things being done, there is a crying need for teams to be able to estimate, for example. In terms of definition of done, definition of done is a series of checklists in my recommendation. There's one for Java code, one for databases, one for screens. And okay, for screens, does it have these metrics for GOMS analysis? Is there a maximum number of screens per use case? Are the buttons at least as big? All these things that are measures of often internal engineering excellence. Because testing may be part of the definition of done. I actually like to separate it, because testing is testing, and I like to reserve definition of done for the kind of things that are easy to hide. So is the code refactored? No, there's no test for that. It's really easy to hide. And so I want to have a definition of done that is going to remind the team, this is really important, and you should cross that bridge before you move on. Is the internal documentation done? Are all the SVN branches checked in? Is everything compiled without warnings? These things that we agreed to, that we're going to do. So I think that from the perspective of engineering excellence, this is very, very important. Where I think a lot of the discomfort comes from is again an insight or principle that often comes from, or I think originally came from extreme programming, which is this notion of let's defer the decision about whether something is done to the last responsible moment. So there's this general principle, defer decision to the last responsible moment. So people view definition of done as a quality gate. So we're going to do the sprint, and we're up there is that quality gate. And when we get to it, we'll stop, the gate is closed, and we say, are we done? Do we meet the definition of done? Is everything checked off the checklist? And if so, we can open the gate and go through. Scrum is a gateless process. Scrum does not have quality gates. And so this view of definition of done as a quality gate is kind of a misinterpretation. So let me explain. The way this works, I know what I'm going to be expected to achieve up there, okay? And I can see the gate. It's not hidden around a corner or anything. I'm looking straight ahead. I can see that gate. And I know I'm headed there. And so I know that I have all the time between now and then to be able to finish this checklist. I'm going to open that gate long before I get to it. So it's not a gate. I'm going to flow through it. Scrum is about flow. And this definition of done is what makes sure that I'm flowing through that gate with the same product. And something that really is worth selling, and something that is not going to require a lot of rework or develop a lot of technical debt. So I know Jeff is very big on the definition of done. I'm totally with him on this. I think that a lot of the misgivings about definition of done are based on misunderstanding, they're based on fear, they're based on insecurity, or they're based on misunderstanding. And it'd be nice if there were, no need for rules, and everything was happy bubble, and we wouldn't need these kind of things. But Scrum is a discipline. We're running a business here, and so there has to be some discipline. And meeting the definition of done is this commitment. There is a discipline. Scrum is a discipline. So I don't see anything out of place with that. It's a concrete set of expectations. The team concretely knows what's expected of them and what's not expected of them. And the team commits to the definition of done. It's not someone coming from the outside and saying, okay, you need to do these things. But, the team has to accept this.
Who is the man responsible in Scrum for a release?
Define responsible. Do you mean accountable? Do you mean in control?
If the release will not be done, those features will not be delivered, who is accountable on that?
Well, what do you mean accountable? Will they be fired? Will they have their toes cut off? Will their salaries be reduced? I mean, it don't work that way in Scrum. If by accountable, you mean, do I feel sadness at us not having done this? Do I do Hansei? Hansei is shame, regret, reflection, repentance. Who on a Scrum team is not feeling responsible for a delivery? And I'm not sure it ends with the Scrum team. I mean, maybe it should, because the Scrum team is the one who has control. I mean, the end users don't have control. But I mean, the end users are going to be feeling that pain too. And I think the end users may be part of the solution. Now, maybe they're not part of the problem per se, because maybe they're not the ones who caused this to slip. But I mean, I think the end users also will be able to chip in and maybe say, okay, I think we can help you, team, by giving you better specs here, or giving you models here, or giving you access to this, that will improve your prospects of success for the next sprint. So I think even the end users are going to feel some disappointment and some responsibility if the team is unable to deliver. I don't want to go so far as to say, oh, I'm going to hold end users accountable. But I do think they're part of this constellation of Hansei, of the community working together and putting its heads together and saying, all right, we're messed up. What are we going to do together in order to make this right? And so it's not like finding the accountable. This is a very American thing, and the Japanese knew that. So when the Japanese came to America and taught them 5 whys, it was all about finding the root cause, so the American manager will know who to fire or who's paid to die. There's no root cause in the Toyota production system for 5 whys. It's about finding a causality loop and breaking the loop. There's no bomb. There's no, we found the smoking gun. It's a complex system. And complex systems have these strange loops in them. The purpose of 5 whys is finding this. So, the word accountability is kind of funny. And, I do a lot of training in Japan, and we struggle with terms like kakuyaku, which is this notion of commitment. And the kakuyaku is a direct translation, more or less, of the English word commitment, which does have the sense of it's a promise. And it's not that. So every time we use the term kakuyaku, we have to say, no, because we don't mean kakuyaku. What we really mean is, you have your whole heart and soul in this, and you're going to do your best. That it isn't a commitment. And I think the same sense of commitment or responsibility or accountability, flows over into your question. So it's not accountability in the sense of, okay, they're going to cut my little finger off if I don't deliver. But okay, I'm going to do Hansei. We're going to fix this. And that's everybody.
We spoke about the definition of done. Now that you mentioned end users, I recalled again the role of the product owner. To have a good definition of ready, this means that the product owner should have had the homework done. It's a lot to do.
Yep. That's why we have the product owner team. Or the product owner can delegate some of the work to other people. I mean, it's really a big job for a product owner to go at this alone. It really is. Definition of ready is another one of these controversial things because people feel it gets into analysis paralysis or too many specs or things like this. And I certainly don't want to see us go into analysis paralysis. I can see how this is abused. But the Scrum teams I've worked with, they use this very, very reasonably. It's basically the old invest criteria without the I. There's this silly notion that requirements should be independent. Well, in a complex system, nothing is independent of anything else. Forget that. And Jeff knows this. So he talks about being ready. It's the rest of the invest criteria. It's negotiated. It has value to the market. It's been sized properly, and it's testable. And by the way, I'm pretty sure Jeff believes this. The product owner should be the one who specifies acceptance tests. There are no testers in Scrum. And it's the product owner who's down there on the gamble with the end users. It's the product owners who define acceptance tests. Now, they may not write the cucumber code themselves, but they're going to be the ones who are responsible for delivering something to the market that meets their spec. And that means having a test that validates that.
Can a tester be in that product owner special team to help him validate all these things?
Sure.
Someone dear to your heart will be Scrum Master. What advice would you give to that person?
Have fun. Make sure the team has fun. I mean, all the other advice then you get from the Scrum trainers. In terms of, be attentive to this, be attentive to technical debt, make sure you don't, enforce no overtime and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, in the end, maybe even more than fun, I might change that and say, pursue every opportunity to tap into the team's passion and to leverage the team's passion. The product owner can do that to a small degree too, by having product backlog items that excite the team, and the product owner is a great leader. And the product owner needs to establish a followership and to be a great leader. But the Scrum Master is a leader in a much different way, and I think what's key to effective Scrum Master leadership is this notion about energizing the team and getting them excited. So how do you know the team is heading in the right direction? Well, it has values. You've done the sober, sane stuff, but the team is excited about it. That's a leading indicator. I know there's a lot of folks who talk about the happiness metric and saying, okay, well, you see how happy the team is, and that's an indicator about whether they're going to be heading in the right direction. All the research says no. There's tons and tons and tons of research. You read the Harvard Business Review article or a whole issue on happiness. No, you want happiness by the bottle of wine. The leading indicator of success is team energy. It's team passion. It's team engagement. Happiness is good, but it's a trailing indicator, and so you can't use it as a predictor. So I think I'd advise Scrum Masters tap into the team's passion for being engaged, into their hunger for being engaged. Make sure they're having fun. Make sure they're engaged, doing great things, feeling they're doing great things. They're dying to come to work every day.
It will not be easy for that person. It will not be easy for that person.
I think that depends. On the team. Eventually a good Scrum Master should have a mentality that their job is to put themselves out of a job. I've never seen it happen. But I think at some point, good teams are completely self-sustaining. And a lot of this excitement can come just from the interactions on the team amongst themselves. Maybe they need a light touch from the Scrum Master once in a while to remind them of this, that, or the other thing, but kind of the whole core of Scrum is that teams are self-managing. And I do think this includes elements that go all the way to self-motivation. So, I don't know if I believe it would ever happen, but in theory, maybe I don't even need the Scrum Master for that. I think a good team can be self-sustaining with that, carry themselves an awfully long way.
Thank you a lot, James.
Thank you. Glad to have this opportunity. Great to have spent the day with you here, and looking to see you again tomorrow.
How are you, mate?
All right. Thanks a lot.